Okay, our meeting has come to order of the committee that is examining the Fine Arts Coordinator position for Rutherford County. As is our tradition here in the boardroom, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your commitment to this process. And we have an agenda that each of you have a copy of. You also have a copy of our revised job description. Before we get into that, I wanted to make mention of two committee members that are here this time that were not with us in our first meeting. And so, Ms. Brenda Williams, if you would introduce yourself and give us a little of your background.
I am Brenda Williams. I'm currently the choral director at Riverdale High School. Just completed my 9th year there. Prior to that, I taught for 9 years at Rockville Elementary while it was still elementary and middle. So I did K-8, general music choir. There you go.
Excellent, excellent. And
Sherry Feblis.
Feblis.
Yes.
I'm working on that. Sherry Feblis, please share.
Hi, I am Sherry Feblis. I am the theater director at Blackman High School. I just completed my 13th year at Blackman and moved here from Texas, where I taught at Hardin-Simmons University and Abilene High School.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We wrapped our last meeting with an opportunity to kind of speak to a dream statement and talk about what each of us had in mind that the fine arts position could contribute and what fine arts could be in Rutherford County. I want to once again remind us that our effort here is to offer context to this position that is new for Rutherford County. It's not our duty to specifically craft the job description. It's certainly not our duty to select the individual to fill this position, but really just to offer some insight from the first line, from the front line of teachers about what this position potentially could contribute and how it could best serve our community. So that's kind of where we are in that. If I could lean on Ms. Barnes here a little bit, and if you'll talk to us a little bit about the changes that came from our last discussion to the job description.
I'm happy to do that. Well, the notes that I took from our last meeting included the key points that were made by the committee members here related to what our expectations are for this person, this coordinator, to come in to drive the fine arts in our school system, to improve recognitions, to play a large part in the curriculum and making sure that there is cross-curricular activities going on to help coordinate activities and to really promote the arts across our county and beyond, and to challenge our fine arts teachers to continue to improve and bring better things to Rutherford County schools. So I tried to take the key words that were presented in our meeting and blend them into the draft job description that you were given on the first night. And I apologize that I did not do a strike through and then add. I simply just edited this first job description and created this second job description. But I can go through this and highlight some of the key points that I plugged in here, and that's what I'll do. I think under the position description, not a lot of that changed, except in that third bullet, to continue to serve as the advocate and liaison, to collaborate with employees, parents, administrators, support organizations, and community stakeholders. And again, I continue to add the words promote, support, and celebrate accomplishments, because that was a lot of the discussion that we had. In the first bullet, again, I reemphasize that collaboration, again, adding community members to promote, support, celebrate, because that was an emphasis that we all had during our first meeting. To communicate those events, accomplishments, and awards with all stakeholders. To establish relationships with local stakeholders, to engage and foster partnerships to support and enhance fine arts. That was one of the key points that was made by several committee members. That collaboration across the system to build that shared network and library of resources and instructional strategies and plans. I think I skipped one, to research national trends and innovative strategies, teaching materials, and resources that supported continued growth and accomplishments. I wasn't sure how to blend the word challenge in, so I did it this way. I kept in there facilitating the review and selection of textbooks and related instructional materials, because that position will most likely be engaged in some of those activities. Needs assessments for the purpose of ensuring district curriculum and professional development needs for fine arts teachers. To provide assistance to teachers with classroom organization and management, because we will have new fine arts teachers coming into our school system. And this person, while they won't have a knowledge of every specific area, should have strong teaching background and ability to assist with resources and ideas. Again, to coordinate district-wide fine arts activities, those efforts, those processes, and this list is limited, including but not limited to. One of the things that we have to report are field trips, and typically we have a coordinator who signs off on field trips for specific areas. So the fine arts coordinator would be the logical person to sign off on these activities for fine arts teacher programs. It still may go to a middle school and a high school coordinator, but because this person needs to be aware of everything that's going on, they need to be involved in that process. That equipment and materials inventory and repair, the volunteer approval, which is something that we deal with. Mr. Tackett might want to speak to that later, but because we have so many volunteers that are approved for specifically band, but other areas as well. So to make sure we know what's going on there and who's involved and in what capacity. And again, to ensure the district's fine arts program, everything proceeds effectively and efficiently. Assist with maintenance of records. And I use the word assist because I know one person can't manage all of that, but we're talking about reports, logs, databases, agreements, licenses, copyrights, etc. So that's kind of an open-ended statement. Serve as the advisor for the area of fine arts when developing plans for new school buildings. That came up specifically in our conversation. Assist in recruiting, interviewing, screening, and recommended of qualified candidates for the fine arts position. And again, the word assist, because that is typically a principal's role at the school level, but this person will be able to assist and sit in if requested. I kept this, and we can have conversation if you don't think it's important, but to work closely with the instructional and vocational coordinators as students move from 8th grade into 9th grade regarding their paths that they select. So I think we need to make sure they have the appropriate guidance and information when they make that transition. Submitting budget requests to the immediate supervisor and assist in approval of those building level requests, and then perform duties and responsibilities as needed. That's the catch-all, so whatever else comes up in the course of this position initiation, we know that's going to happen. If you look at the qualifications, I edited this a bit per our discussion. This person, again, as draft, should hold a current Tennessee teacher license with an endorsement in any fine arts content area, prefer a postgraduate degree in administration and supervision or related fine arts area. And again, that was a statement, that we talked about. Have a minimum of 3 years classroom teaching experience. Have a broad understanding of fine arts curriculum skills, have strong communication and interpersonal skills, and then the catch-all there is to meet all health, physical, and background check requirements. So I hope that strong communication and interpersonal skills, that statement is adequate. That's something you guys stressed quite a bit during our meeting last time. And then the evaluation stayed the same because this person will fall under the supervision of the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. So we left that piece there.
Very good. Thank you so much for going through that. I think there are some areas there where this committee has already had significant influence, and I highlighted as Ms. Barnes went through there, researching the national trends and innovative strategies. That was something that we discussed last time, that we want to make sure that this is a position that is a catalyst of Rutherford County moving from one of the best in the state of Tennessee to one of the best in the nation. And as we look at national trends, we look beyond our scope or our borders and really bring innovative opportunities into the schools through the fine arts. I think that the highlighting there of the field trip activities is also notable because fine arts field trips are sometimes different, longer, more involved, more complex, more moving parts than a lot of others, and having someone that speaks that language is going to be critical there. Another thing that I'll kind of echo again, assisting with maintenance of records, one of the ideas that came from our discussion in our last meeting was a combined library of music for the county. Already some teachers are aware that maybe another school has a piece of music and they can borrow that or something of that nature, but this position could possibly be a place where a lot of schools could combine their library such that we have knowledge that the music is out there. Not relocating it in any way, but just that it's out there and available. And if it's not something that one school is using this year, maybe somebody else could in the future. In visual arts, can you think of an opportunity there where are there surplus materials from time to time?
Are you talking about like with the library or?
Well, or just in materials, the raw materials, with the raw materials in music being, the music scores themselves, are there times when there are raw material surpluses?
If it is, we usually just carry them over to the next year.
Yeah.
And then occasionally, I know with the elementary school teachers, the elementary school teachers, as far as the art teachers, work really well together. On those PLC days, they meet. They also meet once a month for in-service. And so they're really very collaborative, and they always have lesson plans. And I know that sometimes at the end of the year, they'll have like a swap meet where they'll bring stuff together to one location, and then everybody will kind of trade supplies. If somebody has more colored pencils or
Sure.
whatever, then they can trade those out for something that they want. I don't know if that answered your question or.
A little bit. It's more challenging. I was kind of expecting it to be more challenging, but it does have a place. So that swap meet kind of opportunity. Down in qualifications, and I don't want to cut anybody off here. If you have a comment, please. Yes, please.
On the Choral Library,
Yeah.
I've been in discussions similar to that at different levels, and those discussions usually result in a discussion on copyright. That comes into play when this school purchased the music. When you purchase the music, you also purchase the rights to perform it. So sharing it with another school is really taking away from the living that the person who wrote that material should be making, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So that
Yeah,
has
you-
come into play, that you're not really supposed to share music because every student should have a copy of it with their permission to perform it.
You've already brought in the expertise
That we need.
I have some background in that, but we, being somewhat distant from, would not even recognize that. So that's what this person brings to the table, that type of knowledge that
Well, you
else would not even.
would have to look into fair use, because there's fair usage when it comes to copyright issues pertaining to performing materials. So
And-
have to look into fair use as to what exactly the stipulations are on borrowing music or whatever. I do understand, yes, that's right. When you purchase a piece, you do purchase the rights to perform it. But there are certain fair use things, like for instance, where we copy parts and we give out parts that are copied, that falls under fair use, so you're not actually photocopying the piece and redistributing it to somebody else. So I guess that would be something you'd have to look into under fair use.
Well, and another thing too, when we purchase equipment, the different band programs around, does it or does it not, it's actually the property of the Rutherford County Board of Education. And so if we were to be borrowing individual pieces of music from a library, if I were to borrow Pomp and Circumstance from Riverdale High School, because I need it for our graduation, I'm borrowing it, and it's still property of Rutherford County, and I'm also part of Rutherford County. So I'm not really sure as far as infringing upon copyright, but I think that this is probably not as big of a deal as far as what we're talking about here. Now, granted, the fine arts coordinator would have access to figure out the legalities. On the other hand, when I purchase my marching band show music, I am purchasing, in many cases, the license to perform that music for 1 year. And if that's the case, then at the end of the year, that ability to perform that piece is done, and I cannot pass that on to somebody else.
Right. Copyright's very complex.
Yeah.
It really is. That may be an Angel McLeod question to, right? Because I'm not sure what falls under fair use, but that's a really good point, because you don't want a situation where we're passing around stuff and we're not supposed to, obviously, but.
By the same token, I know that there are colleges and universities and other entities, United States Army bands, that have the ability to share music.
Excellent. In qualifications, we do have the revision there that we prefer the emphasis on administration and supervision. Ms. Barnes, we were in an endorsement, and we may be saying exactly the same thing, but it was that we were required to have an endorsement in administration and supervision, and now it's prefer a postgraduate degree. Are they the same thing?
Well, I could edit that to say with an endorsement in administration and supervision or a related fine arts area.
Okay, all right.
Wasn't there some discussion on eliminating that requirement?
Well,
And then that's
yes.
why we put it as preferred, like we'd like it, but it's not required, was that?
Preferring.
Right.
I think he's talking about the postgraduate degree. I said with an endorsement in administration and supervision. That was the initial job description, and for some reason I changed it, postgraduate degree in administration and supervision, but that would likely come with an endorsement anyway.
Okay. If they're one and the same, then of course I don't have any problem with it, but it's just my lack of knowledge of, what's an endorsement and.
But I'll clean that up.
Okay.
Or the same thing, a postgraduate in a related field.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay.
I do like the inclusion of the strong communication and interpersonal skills. That really speaks to the emphasis that we wanted in promoting the fine arts, and the comments that we heard of, that we see sports in the newspaper every single day, even high school sports every single day. We see the arts in the newspaper possibly once a month, or something like that. And so we can certainly emphasize that. The board has also increased our communications staff in our budget that has been passed by the Health and Education Committee and by the Budget Committee, and is moving toward the full commission now. Is that right? Right, okay, yeah. So those are all good things. Okay, so I'm going to reach back over here to our agenda. We definitely wanted to go back over that job description. Are there other comments or questions, thoughts about the revisions that we've made there?
Just a couple of emails that I got this week from other teachers, and a couple of them were just like you said, to inform the community of the good things that are happening in the arts, and if there's a certain student or wins an award or something that they could help to promote that. And then also on those PLC days that we have, maybe they could have some sort of in-service, set up, like I know vocational meets together on those days, and so if they had something set up for the art teachers, or I don't know if the band teachers want to meet together, or if they do, but I enjoy meeting with other art teachers and seeing what they're doing and getting lesson plans and ideas from them.
So that's something real easy for me to blend back in here.
Yeah,
so you'll see.
and several art teachers mentioned that, so I know that it's important to them as well.
So would that would fall under the essential duties, conducts assessments for purpose of ensuring district curriculum and professional development needs are met? Is that where we would put it?
That would work, I could build into that, something about, with opportunities for fine arts teams to work together.
Yeah, that's probably one of our favorite things to do as band directors, is meet those PL. We really look forward to it. It's within the few minutes that we spend, well, seemingly like few minutes, but a couple hours, I guess, we spend, there's so much knowledge dispensed. It's pretty incredible. I've always learned something when we do that, so I'm right there.
PLC days are really valuable.
Yeah, they're super valuable. And they do well to get us working together too, across, the county, to see what each other's doing too. Those are invaluable to us for that.
But interestingly, we have at least one high school director whose principal won't let them attend when we do combined, because they have to stay at their school and do. So that would be a really nice way to say, hey, choral directors, you guys get together, band directors, you get together, art directors, you get together as your PLC activity.
Right.
Be assigned to do that, that would be.
So would the coordinator have the authority to do that over a principal, or?
Director of schools says.
Okay.
And that would be discussion between the director of schools, and he's not listening to me.
Yeah.
The director of schools and the coordinators, but I think it's something that we can put, if I can put, to coordinate opportunities through PLCs. I'll word it something like that, and yes.
It's valuable, it's definitely valuable.
School counselors come together, they do it once a year through PLCs. It's hard because principals want them in their buildings for their PLCs as well, but I think a blend of those dates.
Right. And I know at least
Every day, it might be more than once, so.
I'm not exactly sure of the verbiage, but additionally, there are several things. I know that the choral directors, they have an all-county choral event. We have an all-county band event. We have an all-county jazz band event. And in years past, much of the planning of that event will fall on the shoulders of a designated choir director or a designated band director. And when it comes to the logistics of hosting that event, it would fall on the shoulders of whatever band director decided that they could host it at their school. And I've done that at Smyrna High School. I know that we've got a visitor today who has been in charge of that event in the past, and it would be great if that could fall on the shoulders of the new arts coordinator. Mr. Holliday, I mentioned to you at Smyrna's graduation that every high school band brings their own equipment to Murphy Center for that school's high school graduation. It would be a tremendous boost for me not to have to take equipment from Smyrna High School to Murphy Center, especially considering that there is a music department at MTSU that, if there were a coordinator, could possibly make that connection and we could use that equipment. Right. But it would be, and I realize that visual arts and drama and choral do some of the same kinds of things if this could be put in those essential duties.
Can I speak? What if I said something like assist with planning and execution of district-wide fine arts events? That leaves it.
That would, I think that that's broad enough and inclusive enough that it could most anything that we could figure out to do would fall under that umbrella.
And, go ahead.
Could we include in that possibly the compiling a master calendar of all these events that we all have access to see what's going on where? Whether it be by band, by choral, by art, or whether it's all a fine arts, one master calendar, that would be incredibly.
Absolutely. And I can just tack on those two words, and master calendar.
You know, with the understanding that that's not necessarily going to alleviate conflict.
Oh, no.
But at least
Still be 2 or 3
there would be a district-wide idea of what's happening
Right.
at each end of the county.
That's a great idea.
And it might also draw some attention to the various activities that we have going on in our schools. I don't know that maybe the community or maybe a lot of administrators know exactly how many arts activities go on. I mean, I know the months of April and May, they're just, everywhere you go, there's something going on, so.
It could be added to a community calendar.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was going to speak one thing to what Richard was saying about the coordinating the activities. I know we ran into a slight issue this year with the dates that we had planned for our all-county events. Maybe using the arts coordinator as a liaison between calendar dates that band directors are trying to set up and what the principals are voting on in terms of what they're approving times to have it, because I know that was kind of an issue this year. We had traditional dates that we normally did the events on, and when we went to do those on the traditional dates this year, they kind of got shot down and placed on different dates, and part of it was because there was kind of a lack of communication apparently between, what we were doing as band directors and what the principals had scheduled, and we may have worked those things out with our individual principals, but it wasn't a coordinated effort across the county. So that was one thing I know, and Richard can probably talk about that too, but that was one instance where we needed an advocate. We needed someone who could kind of be our liaison at that point.
So can I plug that same thing into this statement and say serve as liaison, county system liaison to assist with planning and execution of district-wide events and master calendar for the school year? Will that cover what you just said, or do I need to have a separate?
I mean, I believe it would. I mean, we don't want to infringe upon, anybody's authority. We're just, planning as we plan, right? And it would be good to have somebody who could say, this is.
And this person will know after having conversations what we're talking about here. Yeah.
I can say, from an athletic standpoint, probably the thing middle school principals in particular would say that this position has brought is that continuity to them, that calendar, that planning, the ability for one person to order plaques, trophies, make schedules, and that kind of thing. There's no question in my mind that it's probably the most important thing I've been able to bring to the middle schools in the athletic realm, and I think that the same kind of thing can happen at the fine arts level.
Excellent. Guys, I just want to emphasize as I'm sitting here and observing and participating in this discussion, even though it is not ours to select the position, it is not ours to direct their individual tasks. That is certainly the director of schools' decisions to make. The breadcrumbs that we're throwing down, because these meetings are recorded and they're available out there on YouTube, and whoever this person is going to have the opportunity to not only see this job description that has been refined by your participation and what you're doing right now, but also this conversation and this discussion, and go back and look at that YouTube video and hear your comments, and they are so incredibly valuable. Everything that you're contributing, it is just... It will do so much. We said in our last meeting, that this is a position that will evolve. We don't exactly know every single duty that will be theirs, but we're doing so much in that line. Please, Ms. Fick.
I was looking at the third bullet, establish relationships with local stakeholders. I was wondering if the fine arts coordinator could establish a fine arts advisory committee made up of local teachers and representing each of the fine arts, and then some of those stakeholders as well could be part of that advisory committee, in which that could help guide them, you know, by listening to what they might have to contribute and things that they would like to see happen. That might be a really worthwhile group for them to tap into regularly, would be a fine arts advisory committee, just a suggestion.
And I'm willing, I can do whatever y'all want me to do. I don't know that that needs to be noted as part of the job description, because I think every coordinator does that to some degree as they build into that position. Because I think of all of our other coordinators, and they have advisory committees that they pull together when they start making decisions for the school system, and Mr. Odom, you may tap into that.
Well, one of our agenda items tonight is the discussion of the integration of Rutherford County fine arts education into the broader community, and that's the three handouts that I have given you in addition to the things that we've already talked about. If we could take a look at those for just a moment, I think it kind of touches on what you're speaking to there. The first one that has the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce calendar on the front page. This highlights just a couple of events and places where we find events spoken of out on the internet and such. And when I hear us talk about a master calendar of fine art events, that master calendar of Rutherford County Schools fine arts events would certainly then be utilized perhaps by the Chamber of Commerce and by these other organizations that have an interest in informing the public about fine arts activities and being able to share that. Also, you see on the third and fourth page, third and fourth page, that the Arts in Rutherford, they highlight annual events, spring and summer events that happen, on a regular basis, and then their fall and winter events. And when we talk about the all-county performances, be it choir or band, the Murfreesboro Jazz Fest that happens each year, and I'm sure that there are visual arts. A highlight of my year is when the new art comes into the central office, that Ms. Barnes reaches out to all of the art teachers and has a selection of art or sculpture, and it changes out here in the central office in that January, February time frame. I look forward to that every year because it's just so inspiring to see that stuff. And I'll make the comment again, as I do in that board meeting, it reminds us every day here in the central office that it is for the children. There are not a lot of children in the central office very often, but those art pieces, they make it clear just exactly what the effort is for. So that's one of those handouts. Other comments on a master calendar or that community interest? Okay, I think we'll certainly be able to accomplish that task. We also could potentially, and I guess both of the next two handouts, one is from the Chamber of Commerce, and it talks about all of the different businesses that are related to the arts in some way. And it I'm sure that these are chamber members that are supporting the local community, but their impact on the arts. And I was very pleased to see that the Chamber of Commerce spends a good bit of time in their presentation on their website of showing off things that are related to the fine arts. And then the other handout there, again from Arts in Rutherford, of individual artists and individual instructors, kind of a clearinghouse of where can I find someone to share their expertise, where are there galleries that we can see art displayed or possibly take something that's really exceptional from our school venue, maybe out into the community. And I see a lot of potential for this arts coordinator to be able to interact with all of these organizations because, as we said in our last meeting, undeniably one of the most powerful influences in our community is our educational system. When the school board builds a school, then in the years that follow, the dentist office shows up and the doctor's office and the drugstore and all those other things. It's not just the subdivisions and houses that show up, but commerce and eventually a gas station and all those things come to those places. Our schools do so much drive our community, and we want the arts to be a part of our community for sure. As I pulled all of these together, I thought to myself, there surely will be something that is not included here, and we need to be aware of where these catalogs are being brought together, and then be diligent as advocates for the arts of adding to them with the things that we're involved in or that you particularly lean on. Okay. Anybody else with a thought on the discussion of integrating the arts into our community? Say, a web page, yes, in the web page, yes. Are we heading in the direction with the additional staff member in communications? Will we revamp the web?
That's one thing. We're doing a couple of things. That's one thing Mr. Evans is doing. You're going to see much more, I don't know whether marketing is the best term or not, but you're going to see much more exposure anyway for all of our programs. They're also looking at new software, which will, you as teachers, we had Blackboard now. You go in, it's pretty difficult to put anything on the web, but it's gotten much simpler. Blackboard's about to start charging us a fee each month and all to use it and all, so we've bid that out, and Trey Duke and James Evans are looking at that. It'll be much more useful, much easier for you or others to update, plus we can maintain more at the district level also for that. You certainly could have OneNote easily using the Microsoft OneNote for you as teachers and all to be able to put your events in and look at what others were doing as far as that sort of thing, and the coordinator could kind of head that up and do it. But I think you're going to see a pretty good change in for the publicity side and the exposure side with this additional person.
The other thing that we'll also be able to do is I've interacted with some of our ROTC organizations as they bring the color guards to graduation, and we see those students, and the junior ROTC comes to the boardroom systematically and shares with us the success rate of their graduation rate when we get a student connected to the junior ROTC program, and they track very carefully that graduation rate and how successful it is when they engage in that. I would certainly look to the Fine Arts Coordinator as well to be able to bring that publicity as well, that the academic achievement is coordinated with the interest in fine arts. When we plug a child in to something that taps into their passions, then they are diligent to complete the task of K through 12 education. And we want to be able to highlight that and give credit to our fine arts teachers for inspiring those students, not just in the arts, but also academically. The task of this committee is to bring a report back to the board, and I'm anticipating doing that in the June 7th or June 9th board work session, or the board meeting on June 9th. So if you're unfamiliar, we have to have a work session because the Sunshine Law keeps us from discussing anything that would come to a vote except in an open session. So we're not to speak to one another about those kind of things outside of the boardroom. Doesn't that make it convenient? So we have a work session on June the 7th, and then on June the 9th, we actually have the votes and go forward. So in one of those two venues, it would be my anticipation to bring a report from this committee, and I feel as though we're moving toward that conclusion. Are there thoughts about that type of report, and do you feel like that we have a good context for sharing that with the board and I guess wrapping up our efforts.
I mean, I had a couple of things in the, I don't know if this is how the order we're going, but I had a couple of things I wanted to ask about in the essential duties, maybe that we could talk about, and then I'm pretty much clear with what we have here, in other words, to present. One thing was the next to last bullet point on the second page of the essential duties. Submit budget requests to the immediate supervisor and assist in the approval of building level budget requests. That's in regards to purchasing equipment, correct?
I would assume so.
Well, I
It could material supplies.
have that same kind of description, but spelled out maybe a little differently from another district. I was just going to read to you, and I can give you a copy of it. But it says, projects performing arts budgetary needs, monitors the use of allocated funds, develops and evaluates bid specifications and bid awards, and coordinates purchases of K through 12 performing arts, new furniture, and equipment. So it's a little bit more, maybe far-reaching, I don't know. I don't know how we get into, because I know we always get the budget and the bid request list, and I don't know if the coordinator needs to have anything to do with that or not. But I mean, I know in Metro, Nola Jones does a lot of business with getting instruments for schools and acquiring the funds, whether it be from the Country Music Association like we discussed or whatever.
I'd be happy to replace the statement in here, but I may have to edit that just a little bit.
Sure.
I'm not sure about the furniture and those pieces, but I'll talk to Mr. Odom and see. But I love the first part of it.
Okay, and the other thing was just a minor one on the fourth bullet point from the top on that same page, serves an advisor for the fine arts when developing plans for new school buildings. Could we also include something about and remodeling current buildings? Because I know when they did remodeled Central Magnet, it would be nice to have input on, because that's a huge part of what they do there is with the arts.
And we may use board terminology of capital improvement projects because, that really puts it into, there's a systematic capital improvement program that if we understand that the acoustics have just never been great in, name the place, whatever it is, it may not happen in year one, but we can put it into that capital improvements program, and then it's there at year 5, and it moves to year 4, and it moves to year 3, and then we can see it's coming, it's going to happen, and that's sometimes it's a relief just to get on the schedule, and we can see those things come.
I know a lot of schools, and I know Dramatic Arts can speak to this, there's a lot of schools that are dealing with lighting issues right now, especially middle schools. And so that's one of those things where,
And
I think
older high schools.
Yeah.
For sure.
It really is. At least a little lump in your stomach.
I was there when it opened up.
Another thing that we talked about in a previous meeting is and you touched on it here when we talked about budgets and such, but I'd almost like to see, or at least hear discussion about a specific effort on coordinating grant writing, and that might be an individual bullet point by itself, because there's, as I said in the last meeting, there's expertise here at the central office for writing those grants, and across all visual arts or across all fine arts, I'm thinking of the visual arts there, that we could do that. Yes, sir.
When you said the grant writing, it reminded me of, there was an artist here several years ago that worked with the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the Tennessee Arts Commission has a lot of grants, and her name was Leslie Roberts. And if you go to the Avenue, there's some mosaics out there that the high schools did. If you go to Oakland High School or Siegel High School, she worked a lot with me and with Barbara Smith-Slough and put mosaics that were in the school, and all those mosaics were funded through grants from the Tennessee Arts Commission. And so that was something else that I was thinking about, and I hated to keep going back to this, but if they were working with local artists, where they would bring them into the classroom and, they could write a grant and whatever that artist does, work with the students, and then they could make a piece or something for the community or for the school. And I just think, public art is really good. When Mr. Tackett was the principal, he bought us a welder, and we made a metal sculpture for the school, and it's still there out front of the school.
Excellent.
And so, public art is, in my opinion, is very important. And it just, with the art around here, and it just really makes an impact in the environment. And, it's just really nice to have access to that. And I think bringing local artists in, where they would have access to students, and I've had a few come to my classroom, and the kids just really, sometimes they respond better to them than they do to me, because there's somebody that's out there, doing it all the time. And, I think the kids appreciate it.
I have seen very impressive art displays also in some of our libraries, and that is another kind of gallery space that a voice from the central office can advocate to a building administrator that we really need that kind of collaboration, because there needs to be gallery space not just on the wall right outside the art room, but elsewhere in the school, so that the achievement can be recognized and celebrated. So,
And that idea could be across the whole spectrum. For example, Mr. England was talking about, David was talking about the members of the Middle Tennessee Symphony have been known to go around maybe a quartet, a string quartet, or a woodwind quintet, go to the different schools, and oftentimes the funding for that comes from a grant, and so much of the time, to be honest with you, as far as writing grants, doing what I do, what we're doing in the classroom, it's an incredible amount of time and effort to not only get your grades in and to be ready for the performance, but also reach out and make those connections that make the grant work.
Yes.
Because everybody knows that just submitting the paperwork to receive the grant that's just one step of it. And this person hopefully would have that ability to, on all of our behalf, to go through that process.
very true. Other thoughts?
Let me just make this comment. Everyone at this table and in the audience, I think, are advocates of what's taking place and what's going to apparently going to happen. And I think we can sit here for another 3 or 4 hours and add to this list, and we come back tomorrow and we can add to the list some more and some more and some more. When this list is going to take its shape, it's about a year after this person's in the position. And get in there and wade through it, figure it out, and so forth. So I think to continue to add more and more and more is probably beyond what, at this point in time, we need to do that. I think we've got plenty to work with. That person will have plenty to work with, and we'll ferret through it, and we'll find, I promise, 3 things that aren't on there that in these PLC meetings that they'll meet with the people and so forth, that in these small groups, they'll come back and say, this is something we really need you to do. I think this is when it really takes its shape.
Indeed. Well, then, with our school board chairman here, I will ask that we place on the June 9th a report from the June 9th school board meeting, that we place there a report from the Fine Arts Coordinator Committee, and we'll have that then in the regular board meeting on June the 9th. And I would welcome any of you guys to come and help in that presentation. Essentially, what I will share with the board is this continued revised job description that we have worked on again this evening. And I think, again, the work is very, very valuable. I think that this is a much better reflection of what our community is looking for, and a unique reflection. Not exactly the same as what Metro Nashville has, or Williamson, or some other district, but unique to our community. And that's absolutely what we were striving for. We have a third meeting as part of our proposed agenda that we could have. Is there anyone here on the committee that for any reason, and I will certainly come, because if you haven't figured out, I will talk about the arts all evening long. I do not mind one bit. But is there anyone here that feels compelled that our committee should meet again? Okay, guys. I want to welcome Mike Amet with Riverdale High School. One of the challenges that he shares with me is that there's no specific feeder school that feeds into Riverdale High School, and having those connections into middle school and possibly part of that professional learning community when we reach out. We've included that here as we talk about having that close instruction relationship with the 8th grade. And inspiring those students, whether they've been exposed to the arts in middle school, or perhaps even if they have not, when they are selecting that area of emphasis for their field of study in high school, that the arts would be well represented. And so I appreciate your attendance tonight, and I'm reminded of that key area. Mr. Odom, you have a comment.
I was going to say, last week I was at MTSU representing Rutherford County in the art show. It was basically city schools and Rutherford County schools, some very, very good art there for ours and Musselburgh City and all. But I was thinking all the time, gosh, I have the title, but the person to be there would have been the fine arts coordinator, who would really had a deeper feel for it and the connections and all there. I think another thing, because it'll come very quickly, is that we need you as teachers and all to get people to apply for this. We really, when it's posted, and we may, after we get approval of this job description, what we typically do is we post it as a possible, and we do this with principals and other county positions until the budget is technically approved, which is kind of the last day of June. But you can go ahead and post it as possible. And when you post it as possible, then you can go ahead and say that if we get this money, so-and-so may get this position, and they can start right in to do it. But you need to help us to find people that you would like to see apply. There is some attractiveness here. If somebody is retired and it's a half-time, so if it doesn't go over that 100 days or so, they can get their state retirement if it's someone like that, plus get their pay for half-time for this position, so maybe make more money than they have in their whole life as a teacher, and something like that. So there's certainly some attractiveness here, but we have to build it up but get the right person for it, But you can help us do that. Not everybody looks at our website for positions that's in fine arts, they just don't. So we need to get the word out.
Such a good point.
One more thing, if I may share with these teachers here, I hope that you'll share with your colleagues the need to thank the school board for what they're doing with this. Seeing the need and following through with this, I think it's going to be a great asset. And I think we're, like a lot of folks, it's easy to complain when things aren't going well. When something happens, it's on the positive side. It'd be nice for them to hear some words of that. So I would encourage you to share that with your colleagues. If this does come to pass, that the board should be committed to that.
And along those lines, I'll share that occasionally I've gotten a comment of, it sure is happening quickly or something of that nature. I know that Chairman Blair knows for a fact how many times that I've bent his ear about this. And so for about 3 years, sometimes when I hear, man, it sure is happening fast, I go, yeah, not fast enough for me, because it's been at least 3 years that I have said when it came budget time, couldn't we have? Might we add? Let's think about. And finally, it has come around, and I think for all of our benefit, and certainly for the benefit of the students. If there's not any other business, I thank you so much for your participation, and please extend that appreciation to all of those who have sent you emails and have contributed to our collaboration. It is the strength of our system, how well we work together, and we'll stand adjourned.